Good morning. Welcome to the podcast on Smash USA. It's a pleasure to be here, all in English today, guys, with Giovanna, Tiago, and with our special guest.
Hello. Good morning. I'm Giovanna. You can call me G. I'm so excited for our podcast on Smash USA now, all in English.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tiago, and I'm very happy to be part of the On Smash USA team here in this podcast. And today, as Manuela mentioned, we have a special guest. It's Blake Hoffmeyer. I'm going to read to make sure that I kind of give you credit for all the things, amazing things you have done. First of all, Blake is a friend here in Atlantic Village. We met each other when we just joined Atlantic Village maybe 2 years ago, right during COVID. And he was great to welcome us here. Blake, from a professional experience, a communications professional with a decade of experience in tech. He's currently serving as the marketing director at FitFixNow, an online platform providing continuing education to fitness professionals, which he helped to co-found in 2016, 7 years ago, which in startup years, like 70 years in large corporations. So congratulations for the whole kind of achievement and the time that you have been developing this. He got his start as a communications consultant, wanting to offer reliable content for small to medium-sized companies seeking custom acquisition solutions. In addition, he is a partner at the TRIO Custom Clothiers. Welcome, Blake, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it, and it's great to be here.
Thank you, Blake. And Blake, I know that you have some words in Portuguese that you can tell for our audience. So can we start with some hi?
Sure. Well, with the I'm sorry.
On the spot.
Desculpa. That's the chord. Desculpa. Caipirinha, right? Desculpa.
Caipirinha, desculpa, yeah.
But obrigado. But that's my main three words. It serves me well.
Yeah, you have been in Brazil, right? We are all Brazilians, but we are doing our business here in the United States. So when we met, Blake was telling us about all the words that he knows in Portuguese and his experience in Brazil. If you can tell a little bit for our audience, because we have a lot of people watching in Brazil, it will be amazing.
I hope so. I do not intend in any way to overstep, but I definitely enjoyed my time in Brazil. Brazil is such an amazing country, and it's full of just people who are just so genuine and authentic, and they genuinely care about you. And it's not that people don't around here. We find our own, little communities that we care about each other, but you get the feeling in Brazil that just everyone looks out for one another, and not just like, physical and like food needs and stuff. They would, but like, community, like they understand the need for being together, for birth family and everybody's family. And so I really appreciated that about the culture, both in Sao Paulo and Rio, where I had visited.
That's awesome that you mentioned that, because we live here in the US for a long time, and there are great things about American culture as well that we all appreciate. But the farther we are from Brazil, like the more we kind of connect to those things that you just mentioned, like the community, how people are open, how they're so warm and welcoming, which is kind of an amazing thing about our culture. So it's great that you're able to go there and experience yourself that from an external perspective, because sometimes even Brazilian people don't value that as much because that's our reality. So we just take it for granted. But it's great to have that perspective.
It's like here in Atlanta, there's the aquarium, right? And I remember when the aquarium was built, and its big claim to fame from what I can remember was it's bigger than the Chattanooga aquarium that was the bigger one. And it's been this, I've heard amazing stories. My nephew, who's like 9 years old, has been like more times than I can count. I still haven't been, and I need to go. But it's like, you live in these things and you don't appreciate how amazing they are, when they're around. And so I completely understand what you're
a nugget from that. I lived in Rio my whole life. I was born and raised. I only went to the Christ Redeemer. I think I was 19. 19
Oh,
years
that's
old.
crazy.
So,
That's crazy.
so
Yeah,
I can
no, no,
understand that.
yeah,
It's a tourist
absolutely.
place. You just don't go there. Awesome.
It was really funny though, like, and this is one of the things I love about how I think it's a statement about how what I kind of thought of is how seriously Brazilians take their culture and their art. When I visited, it was after some of the mudslides that had happened back in 2010.
Yep, I remember.
And when I was visiting, the statue was actually covered because an individual had vandalized it. And I remember my friend who I was visiting with, his aunt told me that the man had to turn himself into the police for protection from the people because the people were so angry that he had marred their cultural icon that like he goes to jail to be safe. And so I was like, yeah, don't mess with our art, don't mess with our culture. I was like, I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Cool, Blake. Like, we're glad that you already have been in Brazil and to talk about our culture. And let's start the episode talking about more about your career in the US market and the challenges and the change and what bring you to the tech, like to the startup model and everything. Tell us more, please.
Sure. So I had come out of um I think and I apologize, I forget to mention this in my bio a lot, but I'd come out of the military, and when I went back to college, my parents were super supportive. You know, I was expecting to like get a lot of guidance to a very what people would consider be a practical degree or something like that. But then I remember my mom gave me a book that was about acclaimed writers and the day jobs that they quit to start writing full time, and through that, like I enjoyed writing, and I went into a creative writing program, and I only got support, and I always all around I expected like, oh, what are you doing with that? Like, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to use this? But I never got that, and I'm very grateful for that because I pursued it and I took it seriously. And yeah, everybody has the dream of like publishing a book or a short story or anything like that. But you know, as I came out of school, I knew I needed to get a practical skills, right? Not that writing wasn't a practical skill, as I learned later, just how practical and essential a skill it is, that a lot of people take for granted. But the ability to become creative was so useful. Like it was like, because one of the things that the professors explained was that they were trying to teach. A lot of people say I have to wait for creative inspiration, and their argument, and all of my professors were published writers and stuff, and they said you have to, if you take a craft seriously, like you have to start working with yourself to figure out how to move yourself into that veil of creativity, even when you don't want to, even when you necessarily don't feel inspired. And that itself is a skill, and it takes a long time to cultivate. And it's still like, even for people who cultivate, it still doesn't work all the time, you know? And so, you know, you hear about procrastination with creatives and stuff like that. So anyway, I knew I needed a practical thing. So I took an internship. It was a company that was at Atlanta Tech Village at the time called Sidekick, and used that. It was a very short kind of summer internship. And from that, I found my first job in tech, and that was a small company that was kind of doing a lot of LinkedIn optimization before LinkedIn optimization was kind of, at the time, this was probably like 2013. And so a lot of people, this is before Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. And at the time, LinkedIn was really kind of viewed by the public as a resume, like you do this to get a job. And even though some people had been using it to prospect new business, they hadn't really been using it that much. And I was intrigued because this company was called Credible with a K. What they bothered to do was actually take, I thought this was brilliant, right? And this kind of shows what our own hubris, our own pride as people kind of omit. What they did was they had different executives from different industries review sample LinkedIn profiles to keep them the same. Like, what do you think about this one? What do you think about this one? What do you think about this one? You had questions, then you had eye tracking. So they worked with Georgia Tech to do some eye tracking studies, and it's really funny because what they found was that of all these executives at the time, right, their answer for how important do you find the person's picture was not important at all. However, the eye tracking revealed that that's where most of them spent most of their time, was looking at the picture. And I'm not saying like gawking for like minutes or anything like that, but it was, of all the information they glanced, their eyes spent the most time on that. And the reason I bring that up in this is because this was kind of my education of the world that I experienced it before I went into tech is kind of artificial, right? Almost like your house, right? When you walk into your house, is your house the walls with the paint, or is it the electricity and the plumbing behind the walls, right? And so most of us walk into tech only having seen the walls, not knowing what's under it, not knowing what the deeper level is. And that's where a lot of people, I think, tend to run into trouble. But in seeing this, like, I think it's the benefit of being young, was that I didn't have the voice in my head that says, I don't think you can do that. And so when it came to end my time there, I was like, oh, well, I should do this. And my thinking at the time was, I thought the probability of me, I thought a lot of kind of tech entrepreneurship is kind of like a gold rush, right? So in a gold rush, you've got people running out, trying to get this gold out of the ground, and everyone's going to seek their claim. But the one person, like from all the stories, who always does well is the guy who sells the pickaxe and the shovel. And I was like, I could be the guy who just sells the pickaxe and the shovel, do that while somebody else finds the gold and becomes the billionaire unicorn. Nothing ever works out the way you want it to be, but this era of communications consulting, kind of almost like a mechanic, allowed me to get into the inner workings of a lot of different lower level tech companies and see a lot of their struggles, a lot of what they faced, and how they succeeded and how they failed. And that was very valuable to me, because I was able to use those lessons with FitFixNow and to really find ways to solve problems that other people just weren't willing to do or couldn't go down.
Awesome. Can I ask you something? Because I think you brought a great point, and I do believe like entrepreneurs are the best equipped people to kind of solve the problems in the world. Because I think three characteristics for me that I've been in this startup world now for 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and talking to a lot of them. I think the best ones that are able to be entrepreneurs, three qualities come to me very clearly, and not necessarily in one person. Could be the co-founding team, because as an entrepreneur in yourself and ourselves as well, like it's great to have teams with different complementaries, that kind of skill sets. But I think three characteristics for me is creativity, resilience, and resourcefulness. Which is kind of the ability to kind of sustain for a long period of time in a path that you believe you can do. Be creative about constantly changing your business model. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. And be very resourceful. When the problems come, you have to solve things. You don't have the time or the money to make it. You have to be able to kind of solve problems on a constant basis. What is interesting about your background is that you came from military, which you can think of like a very resilient, probably, and resourceful as well. And then you jump completely into something different, the creative writing, which feels like almost like it couldn't be more distance from kind of that kind of mindset. But I think it was a great complementing skill set for you to actually decide to become an entrepreneur. Do you agree with that? And how was that kind of, how did you utilize this both sides, from the kind of resourcefulness and resilience and the creative side, in your kind of entrepreneurship experience as well?
Sure. I think, first of all, I don't think there's one way to answer that question. And I know it's, kind of complicated, and people want like, oh yeah, it's great, I could give you an official, yes, it's, good to balance out me as a professional, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, I wasn't even like looking for it at the time. It was something that I did. Like, creative writing was kind of something that I just always done as an outlet. I never really talked about it, never really thought about seriously or anything like that. And so, it was just kind of an interest that was steadily encouraged. And I even And while I was in the Army, it was still an outlet for me. Would do this, that, and the other. And I think over time, what I see looking back is, oh, it makes sense. That balanced me out. As kind of what you were getting at. I wish I could claim that was on purpose. I think it was more of a happy accident. That, you know what I mean? That like, oh wow, I found this and it balanced me out. And now I think, there's I'm very, very big on your world or your universe, even your DAO, kind of understanding the world that you exist in, right? It's kind of like a river. And I think for a lot of my life, I fought that river. I fought the currents. And I think that as I developed these, like, oh, the military gave me great grit, resilience, resourcefulness. And then, and also encouraging the creative side of me. Only, they fed in on each other and stuff. And eventually I had this. And that's why now I try to find things to balance me out, and now, that's the benefit of time, is that time and experience, is that now I can see, oh, this is how I can solve problems in the future that I accidentally did in the past,
Perfect, Blake. It's amazing. And thank you for you share with us all that your experience. But now we're talking more about the social media. With all those communication platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, how your brand is doing the match with the content production and the sales funnel?
Yeah, that's a great question, because so when it comes to the social side, one thing that we always see that's super important, and you hear this, like everybody hears it, but they're like, oh, okay, but what about the other thing? It's where is your audience, right? If you're trying to so our FitFixNow has like so the primary target demographic for us is women 25 to 34. Second to that is women 18 to 24. And then third is men 18 to 24. And and seeing all of that stuff, I'm probably not going to get a lot from LinkedIn. That doesn't mean I'm going to ignore it, but I'm probably not going to get a lot there. Maybe TikTok, but TikTok's also a very specific, some of our trainers might, some might not, because we fit a very interesting cross section of older Gen Z and younger millennials. So with that kind of going in, there's not going to necessarily be one thing. It's great when you can find a trend that works on one platform or even crosses platforms and can do all that. That's hard to manufacture. And I think that what a lot of people do incorrectly is they don't focus on the basics. Am I putting real helpful things out there? And helpful doesn't just have to mean educational. Helpful could be a joke to make somebody's day easier. They don't think about that. They're like, oh, but that joke has nothing to do with my brand. And your brand might not joke and all that other stuff. All I'm trying to say is don't limit yourself. Try to think outside the box and say, what do my followers need right now? They might need information about who I am or what I do. They might need a laugh. They might want some information. They might want some inspiration. And so answering those questions and inauthentic things like paying for followers and stuff, even though like people know that that's not really the way to go yet, people still, I see all the time, get kind of suckered into it. And it starts from the genuine content, and that's really what it has to be. And your message has to be, quality as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. One thing that I would love to hear a little bit about us at Gimbal. One of the things that we really target is purposeful oriented startups, like that has a purpose. And we're trying to reach the ones that we consider like a purpose of the highest level, that everything they are doing in a sense has an idea of good social impact. Like that should be a core value of the whole road and what is driving that entrepreneur. I'd love to hear a little bit about your beginning with FitFixNow. And how did you think through and how did you land on this idea, and what is driving you and the purpose for you to be sustaining this for the last 7 years?
When I first started out on my own, like I'm not gonna lie, I had a purely a profit motive, right? I was like, okay, I don't want to go work a 9 to 5. I want to do all this, and it's funny, as I grew up failing, failure is the best way to grow up is, I saw that money alone, for some people, they can be fueled by that, and that's great, but I can't. And I think understanding what fuels you is important, and purpose is what fuels me. So from the beginning with FitFixNow, it was a matter of the quality information that my mom was getting. My mom was a personal trainer. Her and I founded the company together. And, because she brought 20 years of industry experience to this, and I just brought modern marketing and advertising concepts. So it made sense. But we were looking through the stuff, and she was like, I'm just not happy with the courses that I've had to take, because we create courses for fitness professionals to renew their licenses. So but then we got into a deeper thing, which was, we realized, partially because my mom is a baby boomer, and active ager is the common term. A lot of people from her generation didn't grow up with fitness. And so a lot of people who are now, 70 plus years old, even 60s and above, if they were running or exercising, they were playing a sport. That's what they were doing. It was strange to just go exercise.
Yeah.
So even starting with that kind of a cultural thing, there are a lot of barriers for older Americans. And the thing is that they need it more than the young people. They need guidance and fitness and wellness. Yep. And what we realized with this was that there's a gap there. That's an opportunity for us, but the real opportunity is where everybody in society wins, right? Because we found other gems that are actually, focusing their programming towards older adults. And what you find is that these older adults, overwhelmingly, they come back because they can play with their grandkids. They come back because they can actually travel with their spouse. They spent their entire life working. What would be worse than spending your entire life working, dreaming of visiting a place, right? And not being able to get there because you lack the mobility, and it might not be handicap accessible. It might not be wheelchair accessible, and so all of those are things that should absolutely be fixed. But on the way there, what can we do as we age to improve our mobility and quality of life? And it turns out that that's a resounding message. That message is really connected with our customers, and it really connects with people at large. One business owner or one gym owner, she owns that business that we were talking to, said that one of the craziest things that she saw during the recession in 2008 was that her clients would cancel trips to Italy, but they would not cancel their personal training appointments. And the reason being was because the personal training appointment is how they had quality of life.
Yeah.
They could skip out on Italy for a year, but they were not going to miss out on their ability to just feel better every day and do this and that. So we've probably dedicated a solid quarter of our programming, of our courses for personal trainers, to how do you train people from this population? Because that's the benefit with us, is that we're doing continuing education. So it's not a basic education. It's what's now, what is science found that's changed. And that, as a side note, as an entrepreneur too, is the most important thing. I forget who said it, but as facts change, so must your opinion. If you've had an opinion that's based on this fact, and you find out that fact's not changed, your opinion all of a sudden has to fall with it. And that goes into one of the hardest things that I think I see more often than not, is pride and hubris, is that people become too proud. And when you find that people become too proud, they become business becomes a vanity project. I want it to look this way. Do you want it to look this way, or do you want it to bring revenue? Right? And because people think, oh, it can do both. And in some ways it can. But a lot of times, especially in the beginning, it can't. In the beginning, if it looked the way it did in your dream, it might not make a dime. Now, that's not to say that one day you can't make it look there when you have a base of revenue and all this other stuff. But that's kind of what I see. And don't think that I'm saying people can't, because immediately somebody will say, well, I know this one person who did it this way. And it's like, that's great. It might be possible.
Yeah.
What's the probability of you, right?
Yeah.
Are they the norm or are they the exception? Because all the time we grab exceptions because they're exceptional, like literally. But we have these exceptions and we're like, look at this. And I'm like, that's great. That's not normal. In other words, that's probably not what's going to happen to me. It might, but if it does, that's awesome, right? But I can't count on that, and so those are, a lot of that. But, sorry,
it's a
this is coming out of
combination, right?
purpose.
It's a combination. I think when we have a purpose, we have all the energy to deal with all the things that you need to grow. So I think it's really important, the thing that you told us, when you think about the customer. You need to see your customer. You need to see the difference on their life. Yeah. And that's your goal. Looking at them and see that they are better with you. Yeah. Your focus is in a better life for them. So that's the thing. That's the special thing that you brought to the world. Yeah. So we should take a view for the other side. What's the impact that I want to put in the world, and how I am doing that with my purpose. And that's your strength to do everything that you want, and also bring your profit, and also bring the things that you need to survive as a businessman, right?
But you brought up a word for me that I think that's another learning from this journey with entrepreneurship, which is humility, right? It's not what you want to do. You're here at service, and that's a great frame of reference to be. If I'm at service to serve him, it's not about my ideas. How can I serve him better? And that's the journey for what, in the entrepreneurship route, they talk about product market fit. That's the only way to finding that. So to your point, one of the things I learned, you can share all your ideas as much as you want, because ideas are kind of almost worthless. Because the ultimate solution you're going to develop is not going to be internal. It's going to be by yourself. It's going to be interaction with your customers and developing understanding and getting new information and adapting. You're building that together with other people. And that's the only way to stand a chance, not to be successful, to stand a chance to be successful in this route. So it's a great frame of reference. And I think that service attitude, is key to kind of be successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But you're saying, I cut you off. You're saying something.
Oh, no. I was sorry. I have this. I get started and I just keep blabbing. I think I was just repeating myself at that point. So
that's all entrepreneurs. You all love to talk about our business and
stay on message. But that's another nice thing too. It's really cool when you do something with purpose, and I'm like, oh God, what's my message? It's like, oh, helping people. That's it becomes easier. It's like, oh yeah, that's my message. My message is we want to help people solve their problems. We want to bring things. I think and you're right about that with entrepreneurship. But I would also say this: it's also true with nonprofits. It's also true with elected officials. It's also true with churches. It's also true with Senate. All of these institutions, the lessons of entrepreneurship shouldn't be lost on. And what I mean by this is that sometimes, so I've worked in politics. I've done some work for nonprofits. I've done all of these different things, and the lessons, you have to apply them a little bit differently, but very similar things, variations on the techniques work in these too. And I would encourage entrepreneurs who might not have found their home in corporate entrepreneurship to maybe try nonprofit entrepreneurship, right? If your goals and stuff like that are really there to serve the people and stuff like that, and it's not saying just everybody should, it's just an idea that remember that these abilities we develop as entrepreneurs fit holistically into our lives. How I talk to a client and make the client feel welcomed in at home is the same way that I should speak to my family, and these things are, they teach us about ourselves, and nothing's in a vacuum,
So Blake, if you have a chance to give advice for somebody that is
Mhm.
starting their process, like they are starting their startup, their business or something, like give advice from them, for motivate them in this path.
Remain curious and challenge your assumptions. And the only reason I say that is because curiosity will ensure that you're always learning, because it's a hunger you can't quite fill. And so you try, and you got to learn to manage that too. Like, I'm so interested about this droll subject, like, and this could make me a lot of money, but you have to take a step back, breathe, and do that. And I think that is the best advice I can give, because the curiosity and the always challenging your assumptions means that, I assume that my business is working the way it should right now. I bet you anything that any entrepreneur can find a way that that's not true. That right now, there's always a way that things could be better. There's always thing. But on the flip side, the balance that you talked about earlier, Tiago, is also important, because if you don't find a way to balance, and balance is different for every human being.
Yep.
The key is to learn what yours is and find it, because that is where you're going to find all your superpowers. That's where you're going to find all the ways that you can really make your thing succeed. And so, yeah, those are probably the three things I would say in my advice: curiosity, challenge your assumptions, find balance in your life. And those three, because the nice thing about those three things is, even when your first thing fails, because most people's first thing's going to fail, or it's going to go by the wayside or something like that, you're still there, you're still you, and you can pick it up and do it again, and pick it up and do it again, and pick it up and do it again. So
Perfect. I think all of us as entrepreneurs starting our journey, like we always need this, because if we want to grow, we need this. Like in each step, it's always you have something new to learn with all the tech world, like all the AI tools that we have over there that can help us for more customers, for better journey. So I think it's perfect. I love the advices.
But and I want to go back to something you said there about these skill sets kind of affect all walks of life and business and churches and organizations. And I think one of the things, going back to Gimbal, that our mission is the learning. I think the level of, I do believe the entrepreneurs can solve all the problems in the world. Because I do think there is a lot of heart and purpose in other kind of venues, but sometimes they might lack the kind of pragmatism, the capacity of execution, the capacity of actually getting results and impact that entrepreneurs do have. So if you can arm those purposeful kind of entrepreneurs with the same connection, same support that sometimes the church will have, sometimes a government, kind of a political party will have, but use this to transform the world, I think there's nothing more powerful than that.
I agree completely.
And I think that's the mission for Gimbal for us, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome.
That's it, guys. Thank you, Blake.
Thank you for having me.
For being with us on more episode. See you next week, every Thursday, 11 a.m. Bye-bye.
Yes, podcast on Smash USA. It was amazing. Thank you, Blake. See you guys.
See you. Thank you again.
Thank you again. Y'all take care.